How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your June 2019 horoscope for Pisces, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. We are starting June off with the new moon in Gemini, which is happening on June 3rd, and this is happening in your 4th house. Now, a new moon, of course, is when you have both of the luminaries in the same sign, highlighting and focusing on one area of your chart. This gives us an opportunity to, get level-headed, reset our intentions, clear out the energy in that area. And with this being in the sign of Gemini, this is, reestablishing connection, communication, having different ideas and perspectives about things and being a little bit more open to them. And this is happening in your 4th house of your family life, of your home life, your private life, your actual living situation, where you center yourself. And so this new moon is going to be a really positive time to kind of get a better understanding of where you want to center yourself and what that kind of means moving forward. Now, the next day on June 4th, we're going to have Mercury enter Cancer. And this is a pretty big deal because we'll be talking a lot about this for the next couple months, or next month or two. Mercury, the planet of communication, our thoughts, the way that we think and the way that we vocalize those things, is going into the sign of Cancer, which is all about, emotions and trusting and empathizing and being vulnerable and open, as well as protecting and defending, the things that matter, the things that are important. This is about focusing on the things that we need, not necessarily that we want, but that we need. And as Mercury enters Cancer, Mercury is going into your 5th house. And the 5th house is all about love, romance, sex, art, music, creativity. It's an extension of the 1st house. And the 1st house is all about you. And the 5th house is kind of like the things that make you you. Like, what are your hobbies? What are your, what makes you unique? Now, as Mercury enters Cancer, this is going to be the time of addressing and focusing on those needs being met. Mercury in Cancer is, saying the things that need to be said. Mercury in Cancer is being open and honest and vulnerable with that sense of communication. And within that topic of the 5th house of love and romance and art and creativity, this is kind of like being a little bit more open and understanding and being more focused on addressing your needs when it comes down to like what it is that you want. And I know that sounds kind of like backwards, but that's kind of like the truth of it. And we'll be getting a little bit more into that as we go along. Now, on June 8th, moving forward, that's when we're going to have Venus enter Gemini. And now Venus, of course, the planet of love and money and relationships, sex. She wants you to indulge in all the great things. She wants you to have fun and, look good doing it. Venus is going into the sign of Gemini where she's looking for more mental stimulation. She's looking to, find knickknacks and things that glitter that are going to, be more expressive and more Venusian in nature. Venus going into your 4th house, though, is bringing this into the context of your home and your family life and your living situation and your parents. While Venus goes into Gemini, this is going to be a good time to focus on the things that you might have wanted to pursue within your living situation that, they're going to be good. It's a good time to spruce things up, maybe buy a few nice things, clean some things up, maybe rearrange your room or your house or whatever you're doing. That's a really positive time for that type of stuff. But as Venus travels through Gemini, it's going to be very mentally stimulating, wanting to explore and expand all of that type of stuff. However, moving forward on June 12th, this is when we have Mars opposing Saturn and conjoining the North Node in Cancer. And this is a pretty big deal because, as I said with last month, with Mars being in Cancer in your 5th house, it's kind of like wanting to take action on the things that you want isn't happening, and you can only really do so much, but you've got to do what's necessary. As Mars conjoins the North Node being like Rahu, the dragon's head, our sense of direction, where we're wanting to go. It's in the sign of Cancer where it's like, what are our needs? What do I emotionally need? What do I need to open up and trust? This is in your 5th house of love and not relationships, but romance and sex and all the things that you personally enjoy. Mars conjoining the North Node is kind of like, even though with Saturn being in your 11th house in Capricorn on top of the South Node and Pluto and retrograde, even though there seems to be a limitation with the networks and the groups of people that you involve yourself with, like there's some isolation there, Mars conjoining the North Node is still taking the action necessary to protect itself and to go like, hey, I still want these things regardless of what power I have over it or not. Now, 3 days later, on June 15th, that's when we're going to have Mercury oppose Saturn and conjoin the North Node. And this is pretty important because Mars conjoining the North Node in your fifth house is like, I'm taking action and pursuing these things that I need to do, that I want to do for your particular case, the hobbies and the creative interests. It's like you're gonna feel like you need to take this sense of direction with it. And Mars conjoining the North Node first, then Mercury conjoining the North Node is kind of like shoot first, ask questions later. And as Mercury goes on top of the North Node on June 15th, this is when it's kind of like having a better image and having a better understanding of what taking action on your needs or maybe changing what your wants are, because this is Mars. This severs, Mars cuts, it's hot, it's dry, it inflammates, it burns, and it's in your fifth house. You may be doing something that you don't enjoy, and it's like you got to start taking action on the things that you do enjoy. And Mercury conjoining the North Node the couple days after is kind of realizing what that looks like after making the decision first. But also on June 15th, that's when we're also going to be having the full moon in Sagittarius. This is happening in your 10th house. Of course, the 10th house is all about your career, public vocation, your legacy, what you're kind of doing with your life. It's the 10th house. It's the top of the sky. Everyone can kind of see what's going on there. And while Jupiter's been through your 10th house, there's been room for expansion and growth in your career. And it's retrograde right now where you're kind of contemplating what that looks like. This full moon in Sagittarius kind of comes down to, it's like, we just had Mercury and Mars conjoin the North Node oppose Saturn. We kind of had to bite the bullet and take action on the things that we need to do and not necessarily what we wanted to do. This full moon in Sagittarius then brings up the question of, where do we go from here? What story are we going to write now? And I mean, like I said, the new moon is like focusing on one area of your chart, and the full moon is lighting up a dynamics, lighting up an axis in your chart. It's bringing light to the things that we don't always see. It's bringing light to the dark. And this full moon happening in your 10th house, where there might have been, contemplation and confusion. This is where emotionally you'll start to very much see what direction you're going to be wanting to go in with your career. And that can look a lot of different ways for a lot of different people, but there's going to be a lot of emphasis and a lot of light, a lot of luminary energy within the context of your career and where you're going. Now, as we move forward on June 21st, this is when we're going to have the Sun enter Cancer. This is kind of continuing the Mars and Mercury story, and we'll talk a lot about that as we get into eclipse season next month. The Sun entering Cancer is bringing the light, the perspective, the attention, the focus on those fifth house things and addressing what your needs are within the context of your fifth house. However, also on June 21st, that's when we're going to have Mercury enter Shadow. Now, Mercury is going to later retrograde in the early degrees of Leo, and I'll be doing a video all about that, about the Mercury retrograde, and we'll be talking a lot about that in next month's horoscopes. However, as Mercury enters Shadow, that's where it will station direct after its retrograde, and that's where we'll start to move forward again. So it's pretty easy to say that whatever's going on June 21st in that context of, fifth house stuff, you may see something that happens on that day that you're going to eventually have to come back to. So definitely write down June 21st as a day that some shit's going to happen. It may not be the event that happens on the 21st that's the big deal, but whatever happens on that, you're going to have to come back to that situation. Now, then the last thing that we really got going on in June is on June 26th. That's when we're going to have Mercury enter Leo, where it will station retrograde. Mercury in Cancer is kind of like saying the things that we need to say and being open and honest about it. Mercury going into Leo is like saying what's on our heart and saying it passionately, saying it loudly, being, expressive of this and really feeling it. This is going into your sixth house, though, of, work, your employment, like where you go to work every day, your health, your habits, your day-to-day routine. And as Mercury goes into Leo, where you're kind of wanting to, tackle on these habits and tackle on all the stuff in this Leo way of like, what do I want to do? What do I want to see? Where do I want to put my mindset into? Where am I going to get the most out of things? Mercury will eventually station retrograde right there, where you're going to have to come back to this area, but we're going to talk about that next month. I'm not going to lie to you guys. June, after doing these horoscopes, the mutable rising signs like, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, y'all kind of get away this month with stuff. But this month is pretty intense. Like Mars opposing Saturn on top of the North Node, that is some fucking rough shit. But this month, I can't hit on this enough. This is about attending to what our needs are. This isn't about what we want to do. It's about addressing our needs and getting that accomplished and focusing on that. Because once we get past July, then we can do the stuff that we want to do. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next month.